There are thousands of forms of art, such as pop art, ancient art, natural art, even anti-art. But among all of these beautiful and sometimes strange styles of art the world has, there is one that tends to stick out the most. Aquascaping. Aquascaping is a form of art that is used to design an almost natural kind of scene for fish tanks. There are many styles of aquascaping, but today we're going to take a look at the four main styles. The four main styles being the natural aquarium or the Amano style, the iwagumi style, the Dutch style, and finally the jungle style. Inside each of these four main styles, there lies many small intricate details that makes each one better than the other. Without further ado, we're going to jump straight in to talking about the first of our four main types, that being the natural aquarium or the Amano style. This style heavily relies on heavy nature details in the tank, such as large sticks that look like they were once a mighty tree that arched over a river or a lake. One of the biggest parts for any aquascape is the shape, and it plays a gigantic role in how it makes the viewer feel towards the entire aquascape itself. There are three main shapes to the Amano style. The first of the three is the concave shape, where the taller plants tend to be on the outer edges of the tank, and as they come in towards the center, they become smaller, they're just smaller species, and make it almost seem like there's like a ravine, and the hardscape generally is like two hills on each side that lead into a big ravine, a fjord, or a tear in the ground. The next of the three is the convex shape, which is a complete opposite of the concave style, where instead of the tallest plants being on the edges, they start from the center and dip down, almost like just a nice big triangle in the center. The final of the three shapes is called the triangle shape, a style of shape that starts from either of the top corner edges and then makes a generally perfect diagonal line to the opposing lower corner, and sometimes this triangle that is present generally is a triangle starting from the top corner going to maybe the middle of the tank, but generally goes from top corner to bottom opposing corner. There are arguments that these three different shapes do tend to clash, where you'll see the triangles in all of them, because I mean they all generally just go off the same basis of triangles. It's just they all use the triangles in different ways to make them their own unique styles. See, with the Amano style, it is the most, intuitive with most of the smaller things I'm about to talk about, like with depth, focal point, shadows, and stuff like that. So we're gonna have a few of those to talk about before we get to the other three. With any type of art in the world, there always is a presence of depth, which can help and give art a larger sense of scale to any person looking at the art. Two of the main ways that depth is used in a lot of art, but mainly in aquascaping, are endpoints and leading lines. The leading lines are a great way to make it seem like things closer to you are much smaller and or larger, depending on the way you want to do it, but generally they're used to show a larger scale. But then as you follow the leading lines towards an endpoint, you start to realize that as you get closer and closer to that endpoint, the terrain itself gets smaller and the plants get smaller. This gives the aquascape itself this sense of size that isn't really possible in the little constraint that it has of the tank. Some could think of the leading lines at the end point almost as a black hole. It's almost like sucking everything into it. Just one fine point where everything kind of just sticks out. Focal points are the parts of an art piece that generally stick out against the rest of a hardscape in these, aquascapes. Basically, each kind of aquascape generally has about 1 to 4 focal points as to not drain the magic from the tank, because if you have too many, that almost seems like the whole tank is a focal point, and it's better to have 1 to 4 because then it makes them seem more magical and more important to the tank. An amazing way to get to this focal point that you want, a great way to do it, is adding a lot of driftwood, a lot of rocky structures, a lot of bland and grayish, maybe yellowish sandy structures to allow any plants to just pop, to just be the main thing. Your eyes will be drawn to more colorful things. Layering is one of the best ways you can make a tank look more interesting to the eye. It allows it to have a more 3D sense instead of almost looking at a TV. It's better than looking at a TV because it makes it seem like there's more to look at. And it also works really well with the previously stated focal points, where you could mix some focal points on some of the hills and bumps that some of the layers would have. And another thing that comes with these is that it gives your aquascapes a richer and more complex and immersive thing to look at. It's very dynamic and beautiful with the terrain to have layers. Shadows are one of the most widely ignored styles to use in natural and Amano style tanks, because it tends to give peaceable tanks a very high tension, very uneasy feeling for all the spots that are dark, because normally it's kind of green and lush, but then there will be parts that are super dark. But it turns out that about 30 to 60% of most award-winning aquascaped tanks have more than 45% of the tank covered by shadows. One of the greatest ways to achieve this shadowy goal, if you have it, is to have a large piece of driftwood or stone on one of your farthest back layers closest to the back of the tank, blocking the most light possible. Now, when I say most light, probably about like 45%, maybe even 40%. Then, on the second and third layer, you can have exponentially smaller rocks. So one that's half the size of the first one and then half the size of that one. Just enough to complement the shadows you have already placed, just so it doesn't seem too overarching and seemed too forced. Space is one of the most easy things to get used to, and trust me, if you're an aquascaper, you get good at it really quick. And how to take up as much space as possible is one of those perfect things you can do, because the more space you take up in a natural tank, the better it looks. A more filled and busy looking tank gives everything a feeling of completion and richness that makes tanks look so much better overall. Utility and integration is best shown when a viewer is able to look at a tank and tell everything is one piece. Nothing sticks out too much, nothing is, out of place, everything just makes sense. Every focal point is perfectly lined up with what it has to be with, every endpoint and leading line makes sense. None of it is just, oh hey, there's a huge hill right there and it's flat over here, and all of it just flows together and makes a huge, beautiful piece of art. There are three main versions of creating contrast, those being big versus small, near versus far, and thick versus thin. A good example of big versus small is when there's smaller plants closer to the glass and larger plants in the back. Then near versus far, where there are, obviously same thing, it's smaller things closer to you and bigger things farther away to almost make it seem like they're all about the same size. They all follow the same principle of as long as one's farther than the close one, then they look the same size, but also look different sizes at the same time. The last of these main principles is themes, and there are four main themes that most natural tanks follow, which is mountain, rainforest, hillside and valley, and then finally island. The first of these four, which is mountain theme, is generally a scape that is made up of less plants and more rocks, and you want it to be a very rough and rugged kind of thing, where it's mainly in the back, where it's almost just like a bunch of spiky, mountainous looking rocks with a tiny bit of maybe hair grass in there to make it just look larger. You don't want too many big plants because then it makes the mountains look small, so you want much smaller plants like hair grass and little mosses just to make it look grand, like a mountain. The rainforest theme is mainly used by having much larger plants over top a bunch of driftwood to make it almost seem like a bunch of big canopy trees that would be in a rainforest. And you kind of just want it to be a more dark but lush at the same time forest theme. This theme is a much simpler version of the mountain theme, where it's about the same thing, where there's more rocks, less plants, but as you get closer to the bottom of what would be the mountain in the normal mountain one, you would have larger plants to almost seem like you're on a hillside or walking along a valley. Finally, the last of the four themes is the island theme, one of the most interesting themes for a aquascape, that being down at one of the bottom corners, one of the lowest points in the whole tank, there's a bunch of sand, almost kind of imitating a beach, and then as you go farther up, it's an exponential growth of sudden plants, driftwood, and rocks to make it seem like you're like a stranded island, and it's one of the most fun and simple ways to aquascape. The Amano theme is one of the most perfect themes for beginners to start with, because it's very simple, there's a lot of ways to do it, depth is easy to learn, you don't have to do any the depth shadows, themes or anything, it's just all up to whatever you want, as long as you get the natural look of a forest, beach, desert, do really whatever biome you really can think of, just as long as you can get that point across, and that's the main point of the Amano style. The iwagumi style was by far the most difficult style to pull off and take care of, but yields some of the most stunning works in the aquascaping world by a long shot. The iwagumi style was named after Takashi Amano, who is one of the most influential aquascapers. When inventing this unique style, he strived to create the same feeling as a Japanese stone garden. The iwagumi style consists of four main rock structures to pull off this amazing style. Those rocks are called oyeshi, fukishi, suishi, and suteshi. These aren't just names for some rocks, they all have a very important meaning to the tank itself. The first of the four is the Oyeshi stone, which is the main center point of the whole tank and takes up about 2/3 of the height of the tank, which is a part of what's called the golden ratio, which is perfect for the human eye, and we're just drawn straight to that. Next is the Fukishi, which is also called the balance stone, which is used to balance out the size of the Uyeshi stone and is a great way to create tension in the tank between the two stones. Next is the simplest of the four stones, which is the Suishi stone, which is generally placed between the Uyeshi and the Fukishi stone, which gives a grand scale to the two, adding to the tension of the tank. The final of the four stones is the Sutishi stone, which is also actually called the sacrificial stone, which is not meant to stand out against the other three, rather used to complement the whole rock structure and give the whole tank a sense of togetherness, as well as it is normally covered in plants around this point, but it just gives everything the final touch in the rock structures. Some people may ask this question of what fish should I use if I make a iwagumi style tank. Now, the main thing you want to use is very small nano fish, kind of like tetras and like rasboras, about 10 to 12 though, so it doesn't overpower. The main point of these smaller fish is to give even more scale to the rock structure. You're probably seeing a theme with this style. While it sounds very simple to set this up, oh, just use big rock, medium rock, small rock, tiny rock, it's way harder than that. It's almost impossible for beginners to obtain the most perfect sense of scale here, and it's almost impossible for beginners to maintain because you have to use such small plants, and due to the small plants, they aren't able to keep up with like the algae growth that may happen. So many keepers of this style of tank choose to only have the light on for about 6 hours a day, preventing a higher algae growth rate. See, my stance on the iwagumi style was that it's very beautiful, but it's really difficult to maintain. And for some aquascapers, they don't really want to have to maintain something non-stop or only keep the light on for 6 hours. They want to be able to show it off all day long, kinda. So I find that it's, as long as you're really good at it, that's a good thing, and enjoy it. But for a lot of people, I understand fully why some just don't do it and avoid this style completely. One of the main aspects of the Dutch style is that there is little to no hardscape. It's all primarily just plants. Now, that's also why so many people desire, because some people just don't really like doing hardscape all too much. So having this Dutch style is super perfect for the tanks that they desire. The main technique used in these Dutch style tanks is called terracing, which is basically whenever you have some slight hardscape built into almost steps. So you can have some plants in the back elevated higher up, and with the plants, about 70% of the tank should be covered in plants. And a big part of this is as well is called the rule of thirds, where like in certain thirds of the tank there will be brighter colors like oranges and reds. Generally warm colors are used in these. Luckily, with the maintenance difficulties, there aren't really too many. There are obviously blatant obvious ones, but I'll get to those in a second. But you just really have to accept chaos. If you're willing to do that, it's not bad chaos, it's controlled chaos. Since most aquascapers tend to choose plants that grow all about the same rate and look about the same, just spread them out differently so there's a nice variety of everything, there isn't too much trimming that has to be done, and if there is any that needs to be done, it's all at once most likely. My main thoughts on the Dutch theme is that it's a very beautiful, very chaotic style tank, and I find that the very flat colorfulness of the terracing and soil style is very interesting, and that allowing only warm colors to fill out the green is really cool, because it's almost like an underwater fire if you think about it, and having these very contrasting colors really works out. The slush style attempts to depict the untamed wildness of a real jungle, hence the name. The style is all about letting the plants grow out of control and letting themselves find the perfect balance, which slowly over time gets rid of the need for any maintenance. Funny enough, this is actually really similar to the Dutch style, but it's just the Dutch style but letting things grow out of control without any actual maintenance happening. But there is a little bit of hardscape, but it normally is just used to lift up a few things rather than using terracing. Like stated before, there are very little rules when it comes to this tank in general, and that applies to the fish as well. You can have any fish you want. You can have small fish, you can have large fish, you can have really any color, but a great thing I've found is that you want to have bland-based colored fish, like gray and tan-colored ones, but as long as they have like a nice orange or red or blue tint on them, like a nice blue vibrant stripe or red or orange, really whatever color you like, it really adds to the whole thing, because the thing is everything's gonna just be green in this scape, mostly green. So having an extra color really just makes everything just fit together better. Now, I know I had just stated that there really isn't much maintenance needed, but it still does need maintenance, but it's some of the easiest. It does need weekly water changes to keep up with the chaos of the plants. It also needs a high level of light and nutrient-rich soil that feeds the many growing plants, and even sometimes pressurized CO2 canisters to give the plants a sufficient amount of CO2 to live. Now, my main thoughts on the jungle style is that it is definitely the simplest to achieve and probably one of the most needy at the same time. But regardless, this is a great place to start for some people. Like, starting off with a very messy, do whatever you want kind of style thing really works out for a lot of people and lets them do whatever they want. And they can generally eventually expand into these more complicated and difficult styles. I find that all four of these styles are very beautiful in their own way. I do find that the iwagumi style is definitely one of the best, and I love how it uses larger stones to smaller stones, and I do love how the dense, lush jungle scapes just work really well with each other. I see why these are the four main styles of aquascaping that people use. They're very similar as well as very different. So they all use plants. One uses a lot less plants, that being the iwagami style, and one uses a lot more plants, like the jungle style. And then there's two in betweens, one with a lot of hardscape, one with a little hardscape. I think that they're all very special in their own ways, and I think it's really awesome that they're able to be different like this, yet the same at the exact same time. Thank you so much if you watched the end of this. This is my first ever video, and I'm really hoping I'm making more of these kind of informational videos, and even making some aquascaping videos as well that ties into what I've said today. I really hope that you would be able to just subscribe or something. I'm not begging for it or anything. I would just be glad if you would. It's okay if you don't want to though, but hope you enjoyed and hope to see you in the future. Bye-bye!